So far, we have been declaring variables using the let keyword. But at the beginning of the course, I briefly mentioned that there is another way to declare variables using the var keyword. And you may see this in a lot of JavaScript code online. In this lecture, we're going to look at the var keyword. You're going to learn about the problems with the var and why you should avoid it. So let's start by defining a function. Start. Here, we're going to have a loop let I equal to 0. We're going to run this loop 5 times, and in each iteration, we're going to display I on the console. Now, let's call the start function, save the changes. So we get numbers 0 to 4. Now, in the last lecture, you learned that I is only accessible inside this block. So if we try to log I outside of this block, we're going to get an error. I is not defined. Now, I just want to clarify something. We still have the same concept if I remove this curly braces, because here we have a single statement. Okay? So save the changes. We still get the same error. However, let's see what happens when we replace let with var. Save the changes. What happened to our error? So it turns out that I is accessible outside of this for block. So in the last iteration, I becomes 5, because 5 is not less than 5. So the loop terminates. And here on line 6, we're displaying the current value of I. So this is the issue with the var keyword. When you declare a variable with var, its scope is not limited to the block in which it's defined. It's limited to the function in which it's defined. And this is not how most or all programming languages out there work. It's one of those weird things in JavaScript that we have had for a long time. So before ES6, var was the only way to declare variables and constants, starting from ES6, also called ES 2015. Now we have two new keywords, let and const, to define variables and constants. These two keywords create block-scoped variables, but var creates function-scoped variables. Let's take a look at another example. So in this for loop, let's add a code block here. Now, I'm going to add an if statement. Now in the if block, I'm going to declare a variable using var code or set it to red. Now, technically, in almost all programming languages out there, this variable should only be accessible in this block. But because we have used var, color is accessible anywhere in this function. So at the end of this function, we can log color, save the changes. Look, we get red here, but if we replace bar with let, we get an error because color is not accessible here. And that's how most languages work. So this is the first problem with the var keyword. The second issue is with global variables. So let's delete all the code here. I'm going to declare two variables. One with bar color, we set it to red, and one with left, let's say age, and set it to 30. Save the changes. Now, when we use var outside of a function, this creates a global variable and attaches the global variable to the window object in browser. So in browsers we have this window object, which is a complex object with lots of properties and methods. When you want to build front-end applications, you're going to work with this window object a lot. Now, what matters here is this var keyword attaches this color variable to the window object. So if we type window, look, our color variable is here. In contrast, when we use the lead keyword to define a global variable, that global variable is not attached to the window object. So if you type window age, you can see it's undefined. So why is it bad to attach a variable to the window object? Well, because window object is something central. There is only one instance of the window object, and let's say you're using a third-party library. If that third-party library also has a variable with the same name, that variable can overwrite your variable. So you should avoid adding stuff to the window object. Otherwise you're going to create all sorts of issues in your programs. Now, for a curious developer, I need to mention that when we define a function, let's say hi, this function is technically a global function and is added to the window object. So let me save the changes. If you type window, say hi, see. Our function is here, so we can call it. So technically, this is a global function. It's attached to the window object, and that is bad practice. But how can we prevent this? Well, later in the course where I talk about modules, you will learn how to encapsulate these functions in separate modules so they are not added to the window object. So here's what I want you to take away from this lecture. Avoid using the var keyword because it creates variables that are function scoped, not block scoped. Hi guys. Thank you for watching my JavaScript tutorial.